When I first got to Sundance in 1997 and I had the farm, and Barbara Kopple was like this giant figure to me. And I walked into some, she had a film there that year. It was the Woody Allen Wild Man Blues
Yeah,
film.
I was going to say she had already made, of course, Harlan County and
American Dream.
American Dream. So
I think a Tyson film. And then, so then it was Wild Man Blues. And I walked into some reception. It was probably the first moment I got there for the filmmaker, competition filmmakers or whatever. And there was this woman, like Barbara, she was like, Liz, and she was so warm. And I felt like I had just like hit the jackpot. Like I went into a party and Barbara welcomed me. I felt like such an imposter. I felt scared. How did I get in here? How is this happening? Is anyone going to like the film? And then there was Barbara Kopple welcoming me. And I see her doing that all the time with new filmmakers coming up.
Yes.
And I'm very conscious of that. I try to repeat that as well.
So you've influenced not only did you make a difference to her, but she takes that with her. It's really moving in a way.
Well, Liz Garbus is just wonderful.
Yeah, she's
is. Just an extraordinary filmmaker. I'm so proud of her. And just the work that she's done. Love Marilyn and Bobby Fischer and just all of it. She does it with such panache, and she's so much fun to be around.
And she's a great storyteller.
Yeah.
What I love also about conversations like these is I do all my homework, so I try to see as much as I can going into an interview, so I'm prepared. But it's a treat because of that. I had not seen There's Something Wrong with Aunt Diane, I think it was called.
Yeah,
so there's
right.
something...
That was an amazing.
Oh, my God.
It was so gripping, and it just took you. I mean, you were so scared for those children and those people and the horror that came from it all.
Yeah.
That.
That's normally the way you talk about a narrative film, which is kind of what kind of came up during it. It's like very true. It was put together with the suspense and the tension of a narrative film. Anyway, I wanted to play that for you just to start it off because I thought you should hear that.
No, she's just wonderful. I mean,
that's universal, too, from what I get.
Well, I think that all of us as filmmakers love each other, and we're really good friends, and we each want the other to succeed, and that's extremely important. I just got back from L.A. A day ago, and I was a moderator for the Academy for the feature-length documentaries, and just being able to talk to them and ask them questions on stage with the Samuel Goldwyn Theater, and it was packed. I mean, 900 people. There wasn't a seat open, and just how beautiful and articulate they are, and how their films just really challenge you so much and really let you understand the world around you and how they talk about it and the passion. And it just, makes me really happy to be in this community and part of it.
It's a perk because it's not why you go into it. You go into it because you have this passion for telling stories.
Well, but I think part of it is also the people that you're in there, with them, because to be able to see how documentary has grown from when I first started. I mean, just looking at the Academy, when I did Harlan County, the distributor got very mad at me when I submitted it because then he'd have to tell people it was a documentary. I had nowhere to stay. I had to borrow a dress.
This is for the Oscars you're talking about.
This is for the Oscars, yeah. And it was just a whole different world. And now there are dinners, and there's question and answers, and there's lunches, and documentaries are celebrated as they should be. And it's just a whole different world.
We're actually having this conversation. Barbara Kopple here on Filmwax Radio. I kind of have to remind myself that and that it's the 200th episode, so thank you for that, coming on and making time for this. As you mentioned, though, you did just get back from L.A., where we just had the Oscars this past Sunday night. And first of all, to my memory, in the many years that I've been alive and watching the Oscars, or aware of them anyway, I don't remember such a good year of films in general. But when I look at the 5 nominees for Best Documentary, besides just the fact that I've met and talked to all 5 nominees, which was a first for me. I was saying that next year I'm going to go for the best supporting actress category.
Why not? You could do it all.
Yeah, but I do gravitate towards the documentaries myself. It was an amazing group of films. I think they really truly all deserved being celebrated.
Yeah, I mean, each person had so much passion. The producers and the directors, and given the flourish to really talk about what their films meant to them, were amazing. And some of them risked their lives, and they just did everything they possibly could to bring a gripping and beautiful story. And they're so intelligent about the work that they did. I mean, I was awestruck by all 5 of them.
You mentioned you were talking about your experience a little bit about around the time of when Harlan County was nominated through its actually winning. The climate, we all know there wasn't really documentaries. No wonder your distributor was angry because there was no category for documentaries. Nobody thought of documentaries as a viable type of film that would be commercially successful. Or that was 1970. Remind me the year that would, or is it 76? 76?
Yeah.
Our bicentennial. So what was going on at that time in your mind, especially once you finished it? How people were gonna see the film? Okay. Did you think about that?
Yeah, of course I thought about that. Except I didn't think anybody would really see it because there weren't really any outlets for documentary. And I remember submitting it to the New York Film Festival. And it was 16 millimeter and also 16 track. So they weren't married. And so I called them up and I said, I have this film I'd like to submit. And they said, well, how are we going to do it? And I said, well, I'll do a cue sheet for you. I'll get a double system projector. I'll do whatever you want. And they said, no, we don't do that. And I said, oh, yes, you do. I said, you're doing one on you're looking at the Hell's Angels, and that's the same. And they said, okay, bring it up. So I brought it up. We stayed up all night. We did cue sheets. We did everything for it. And I remember bringing it there, dropping it off, coming back downtown. And then they told me, come back in about 2 hours and pick it up. And so I did. And there were all these people standing around. And I thought, the film broke. Something terrible has happened. Why are they all standing there? And I walked in, and they said, they loved it. They loved it. And Richard Roud,
who wanted to meet you.
Richard Roud, who was head of the festival, they said he only went to the bathroom once during the film.
Was he an older guy?
Well, I don't know. Yeah,
but based on.
But I guess he must.
There's a
right.
relationship between the number of times he goes to the bathroom and how much he
Yes.
Yeah, that's the point.
So
yeah.
I mean, that was a big point.
Yeah.
He made.
That's funny.
And so then I got back down town, and I got a phone call, and they said, we would love to have your film in the festival. And I said, well, I don't know if I want to let you see it. And they said, what? And I said, yep. And they said, don't be an idiot, Barbara. I said, okay, I won't.
You held out for a few moments, though.
Yes,
that's
because
yeah.
they weren't going to show the film. And they said, so, and I had always called it the Miners film. It didn't have the title. And so Richard and I were on the phone and trying to figure out what a good title would be, because, that's always the hardest thing. And so he said, what about Harlan County? I said, cool. All right, Harlan County, USA. He said, good, goodbye. Took 2 minutes of what we had been struggling with, for
So was the director
months.
Of the festival.
Yep. Yeah, Richard Roud.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
Yeah, it was fun.
So that was the launch. That was your premiere?
That was the premiere. Your
first documentary premiered at the New York Film Festival? Okay.
I got the 16 millimeter printout 3 days before it was supposed to show. And I invited the coal miners and their wives, and they came, and
Wow.
Hazel Dickens, and I printed out song sheets for the last song of the film, They'll Never Keep Us Down. And I had them put in all the programs.
Oh, the lyrics, right.
The lyrics,
Mhm.
yeah.
So people could sing along
Yes.
if they so chose.
And so they have this, thing where you have to stand on the balcony, and
Yep.
if people like it, they clap. And I said, I don't want to do that. I said, at the end of the film, I just want to go on with all the coal miners and their wives and Hazel Dickens and get people to sing. And they said, we don't do that here. I said, well, but that's what we want to do. And so we did it. And it was just wonderful. People were standing up and singing, and the coal miners and their wives came out and sang, and Hazel sang, and it was great. And then during the question and answer, one of the characters in the film, Lois Scott, who used to keep a gun in her bra, had just been made the head of the Black Lung Association, and that's from the inhalation of coal dust in your lungs. And so she decided that this was a perfect place to fundraise. And so she started asking people for donations, and there we were at Alice Tully Hall, and people were throwing $5 and $10 bills on the stage.
Yeah, well, apparently they don't do that at the Veneer Film Festival either.
Right. And at the end of the festival, Richard Roud said, well, next year, Barbara, you're going to do it on roller skates? And I said, yeah, that sounds like fun. Anyway, it was wonderful.
So the logical question, and I'm hoping I'm a good avatar for anybody listening, is that where did this come from? Where did the nerve come from to rub against? You're such a pretty young woman, and so I'm just like, where did the chutzpah derive from?
Well, I think growing up with my parents, they were extremely loving, and they always said, "There's nothing that you can't do, and just go out there and do the things that you feel are right." And it was also, the period before that was the 60s, so it was also a pretty rebellious time where people marched against the Vietnam War and, women power and feeling like you could really change the world. And so I guess I incorporated some of that into the work that I was doing and didn't ever learn to take no for an answer.
I'm glad you didn't. I'm sure many other people are too. Well, it's true. 76, 77. This would have been probably right in the midst of what we called women's lib. And Bella Abzug was in New York. She was probably a congresswoman at the time. Yeah. So it was good timing in many ways. But you were also on the making a film where you were out of your element, I assume. And there were people with guns at certain points during the film, and just managed to keep your head and not waver.
Well, before I went to Harlan County, I was doing Miners for Democracy, and W.A. Tony Boyle was put into jail for the murder of Joseph Jock Yablonsky, who ran against him. And so there was this whole movement throughout the coal fields where, those from below and average coal miners were going to win. So I went following Arnold Miller around before I ever went to Harlan County and meeting Nimrod Workman, and who was an old coal miner, and having them sing songs, and this song sort of connected everybody, and you really got an essence of who the people were and the struggles that they went through. And it was a very passionate time.
Harlan, Kentucky is coal country, where men work long hours for short wages, where poverty, black lung, and needless disaster are facts of life. In 1973, the men voted to join the United Mine Workers Union. The company refused to sign the contract, and so began the Battle of Harlan County, USA.
Which side are you on?
Without organization, you're a lone individual, without influence, and without recognition of any kind.
They're treating us like that we're animals, dogs. Well, we aren't. We're American citizens.
Is it a fact that the Duke Power Company maintains housing for its employees that has no water and no indoor plumbing?
Yes, sir. We were attempting to move our people into trailers, upgrade our people into better housing.
We'll sit there and sweat when it's snowing. We'll stand right there until that UMWA contractor sign it, Brookside.
We have made them dozens and dozens of proposals.
All of our life, we've been kicked around, we've been put in jail, we've been shot at, we've had dynamite thrown at us, and then you don't want us to have nothing.
We're on Lafayette at the offices of Cabin Creek, so we're getting some of the background.
Yeah. Arnold Miller won, and one of his promises was to organize the unorganized. And the first place was Harlan County. So, of course, that's where I went to see if he was really going to keep his promise and what that meant. So here we were.
You're a watchdog.
Well,
of
no,
sorts.
Curious.
Okay.
I was curious, not a watchdog.
Okay.
And so I did sound, and I went with a cameraman. I think Kevin Keating was the first cameraman, and assistant camera Ann Lewis. And the three of us went there sort of looking a little like hippies and odd. And at first, nobody trusted us. And the women gave us names like Florence Nightingale or Martha Washington when we asked them their names. But they said, okay, you can be here on the picket line tomorrow. Be there at 5 a.m. So we were all excited, and we went up Pine Mountain, and the next morning it was raining and bad weather, and there were no guardrails on Pine Mountain. And another car passed us, and our car went over and crashed. And we pulled all of our equipment out of the car and walked to the picket line. And then we were embraced because word gets around in Harlan County when you do that. And we started living with the coal miners.
Yeah.
They took care of us. I mean, I think Harlan County was my most amazing film because I learned what life and death was all about. I was told if I was ever caught alone at night that I'd be killed by the head gun thug. My first couple of days there, the head organizer decided I should have a gun of my own. And I didn't know what to do with the gun, but I picked a pretty little pink gun and
A pink gun?
They had them,
like a pearl?
Yeah, a
type
pearl
of mother
handle,
pearl
and
type
it was
of
pink, yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Never.
You still have it?
No.
What?
Because I never used it.
So it's a keepsake of sorts, and
No.
you never know when it comes in handy with one of your projects.
No.
You've interviewed, like, Woody Allen and,
I don't think
Dixie Chicks. There you go, Dixie Chicks. I'm sure they've got guns. They're from Texas, so. Is that true? Are they from Texas?
Yes.
Okay.
Lubbock.
Yeah, Lubbock. That's right. I have a couple of musical connections to your films, as I'm finding out. One is I went to summer camp up in the Hudson Valley, a very progressive summer camp in the 70s. So right during that time, we were singing "When the Black Lung Gets You," that song. I don't know, but so I that's how I learned about the coal miners from folk songs that we sang in the 70s.
Was it a lefty?
Yeah, big time.
What was the name of the camp?
Camp Thoreau.
Oh, wow.
The guy, Greg Finger, was on the board of the, who was the director of the camp. He was on the board of the ACLU.
So you were singing Black
Center
Lung,
of Constitutional Rights.
the song Black Lung?
Yeah, we actually sang these. We sang.
Do you remember any of it?
But I do remember, "When the Black Lung Gets You, It's the Kiss of Death." That's what I remember from the chorus.
Okay.
Fun song for a 10-year-old kid to sing,
Right.
but we didn't know. We were just saying these songs. We sang a lot of Union songs, Union Maid. So there was Woody Guthrie.
Forever.
Yes. These were camp songs.
Which side are you on?
We sang "Which Side Are You?" All of those, yeah, we did. And I guess the other one would be, and one other connection. I worked at Sony Music for many years, so it was I remember when the Dixie Chicks were just kind of going from being more like a country music act to a real mainstream rock pop act, and deservedly, because they were just amazing. Some amazing albums came out of that period of time too. And I went to see them got tickets free, of course I'm going to take all my friends. We went to see them at the Garden.
Yeah, we were there too.
I bet you had better seats than I did.
I think we stood we stood in the back, backstage, so we probably didn't have seats at all.
But it was a great concert. It was very good concert. So around this time back, around after Harlan County and going into, let's say, American Dream, were you thinking of yourself as a progressive social issues filmmaker or storyteller, or you never even went there in your mind?
Oh, no, I did go there. And I wanted to really make films about people that you wouldn't know about, people, who didn't have a voice, and people whose stories, if you weren't there, nobody would know about. I mean, if we weren't in Harlan County, nobody would have known that story. And if we weren't on the picket line every single morning, more people would have been killed or hurt. So it just played right into everything I was feeling and thinking at that time.
Were there filmmakers that you had looked to before? Maybe you thought, I can do this, or maybe you're reading, Howard Zinn or people that were describing these folks, like from the unions.
Oh, sure. I mean, Howard Zinn was wonderful, and I remember I went to Boston after I had done Harlan County. I was visiting there, and he was doing a play on the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire at that time. And I walked in, and it was overcrowded, and I didn't think I was going to get a seat. And I introduced myself to him, and he said, "You come right this way," and he let me sit down, and I couldn't believe that he would know who I was or let me see the play. But yes, I had a lot of people who were mentors, and a lot of people whose books I read and who I just thought so much of.
Yeah,
and my first job was with the Maisel brothers.
Yeah, I've heard of them. So no, you really do have a long relationship with the Maisels. But they were not making. Well,
they didn't do social issue films,
right.
But what they did was they really allowed filmmakers, particularly female filmmakers, to be part of their family.
I see.
And you would all sit in a room and look at material, and they listened to everybody. And your word meant something. So that gave you a lot of confidence that somebody cared about what you thought and what you felt and your essence of storytelling.
Which could go back to my earlier question about where you end up getting chutzpah, because there were actually people that were actively encouraging you during these films.
Yeah, and also another guy I worked with, his name's Larry Moyer. And he now lives in Sausalito. He's a painter. And filmmaker then, and he used to be friends with Herb Gardner and Shel Silverstein, and I was helping him do some painting on one of the books, Lafcadio, The Lion That Shot Back, sort of little helping him paint.
Like coloring and stuff.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And he was amazing to me because he was editing something. And he hired me as an editor, as an assistant editor. And he would leave, and he would say, "Okay, I'm going out for 20 minutes. I want you to cut this down to 5 minutes by the time I get back." And he'd go, "Goodbye." And so I learned to tell a story in editing. And I also learned how to do sound. So there was nothing that somebody could tell me that can't be done, because I knew that it could.
Right. That was smart.
And I think, nobody gets anywhere on their own. You really need to have so many people working and helping you, and then you in turn help others to be able to do the kind of work that you need to do.
So you went from American Dream. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but there was a documentary about Tyson. Is that what Liz said?
Yeah. There was a documentary about
That's
Tyson.
a gap in my knowledge, apparently.
Oh, okay.
There aren't too many, but I'll admit to
that. Was after American Dream.
Yeah.
I did that.
Yeah.
I have dates
before
of all of them.
Oh, you have them at your hand right there.
Yeah.
It's right. There was no written test. It's only take home. But this is really helpful. Thanks. Oh,
okay. So
beautiful. I can reference if necessary. Right. Yeah. I don't want to miss over anything.
Because I don't remember when they all were.
Okay.
Exactly.
Wow. I can edit that part. The part where I'm sort of sitting here like reading.
We're just hanging.
Okay. So American Dream was 1990. It's quite a bit time late. Oh, No Nukes. Okay. That'd be a lot of fun to find yourself doing a rockumentary on the new. I remember No Nukes. I remember the concert at Central Park.
Yeah,
but they also had one at Madison Square Garden, which was that's the one that you shot.
Yeah,
right.
You also did the one at Battery Park too.
Oh, okay. Can people see that particular one, or is that's hard to see? Maybe that one.
No, Warner Brothers has it.
Okay, all right.
You wanted to
I see. You did do it. Well, I don't know. It was arbitrary, I guess, on Mike Tyson before. This is 93, so this was just after,
American
obviously.
Dream.
And the rape charges just had come out, right? That's when you were following this story.
Right.
Yeah. And it was also notable, maybe because I'm going to guess it was your first profile on someone that was famous, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. How?
Well, yeah.
What went into your? What were you? Just ready to tackle something very different with this?
Well, no. I mean,
it was the first also sports related. You could say on some level it was sports related. I know, and I know you've done others since then.
Well, I mean, Diane Sokolow, who worked for Sony, called me, and she was a sports fanatic, and she asked me if I'd like to do a film on Mike Tyson. And I said, absolutely. And, all the Desiree Washington stuff was all just surfacing. And when I at first heard about it, I thought, okay, good. He probably did it. They got him. And then when she asked me to do that, I just let all of that go out of my mind, and I really wanted to see who Mike Tyson was. I wanted to see who Desiree Washington was. I wanted to get underneath and into the soul of sports people. And for me, that was sort of being like Eloise at the Plaza or something, because, if you're a woman, it's a little bit easier to ask guys about sports because they don't really expect you to know anything. So it was pretty good.
So that worked to your advantage.
Yeah.
Too.
Oh,
and
it was wonderful. I mean, it was probably one of the most extraordinary experiences to really talk to all these people who knew Mike so intimately.
I look at these guys, when I first came here, I thought they was, God. I thought they was born like that, but they're not, They're just ordinary people. I would like to be something like them. Not much flamboyant or something arrogant, you can say, but just different from all the fighters nowadays. Because that's somewhere I just like being. I like being sometimes a little arrogant, a little bit, not much, just a little bit, and, a little spoiled. I like that. That's me, and it's always going to be me, and I'm not going to try to change it for nobody.
Mike was cocky and shy at the same time. He was a little boy once you got to know him, but it took a bit of going through the layers to find this out. He sometimes swaggered. He was a bad kid in his head.
The first time I saw Mike in cuss was in September of 1980 when Jose Torres drove me up to Catskill, New York. It was an astounding experience. He was obviously a prodigy. It was like the first time I saw John Coltrane, or the first time I saw Bruce Springsteen, or the first time I read Norman Mailer, or the first time I saw Baryshnikov. It was clear this was somebody special.
To also learn that, Mike didn't understand that when somebody said, no, he thought it meant yes, because Customato wanted him to be the heavyweight champion of the world no matter what it took.
Yeah.
And, young girls were giving him their underwear and their phone numbers, and they'd get into cars with him and they'd have a half an hour with him of sex, or and that would be the greatest notch on their gun. So he maybe really didn't understand it. But I think the most beautiful part of doing that film for me was talking to Desiree Washington's father, who was a very big boxing fan. And when Desiree called and said, you know, Daddy, I went out with Mike Tyson. And he went, oh, that's wonderful. Wait till I tell your grandfather, and that's terrific. And she said, oh, no, it wasn't very good. He raped me. And then the father said that he ran, you know, he went to go see his daughter, and that he went to hug her. And as he put his arms around her to hug her, she put her hands against his chest to pull him away from her. Mm. And he knew at that point that he had lost his daughter, that his daughter, who wanted to be president of the United States and had all these lofty dreams, that this had dramatically changed her, this experience.
She was damaged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I learned so much about Mike. I learned so much about boxing. I learned so much about what went into it. I learned sort of the subtleties and the frailties of Mike Tyson himself, and how insecure he was, and how lonely he was, and how he was looking for love.
So taking with you is not so much about forgiving or not, or judging, I should say, but more about understanding the subject and where they're coming from. And
there was no judgments. People were allowed to say what they wanted, but you got to see, hopefully, you know, these people in a whole different way. You went around a different corner than you would expect. There was no agenda to the film.
Right. Were you a conscious... Oh, of course, at this point, I'm sure now you've been making films for a number of years, and you had quite a bit of experience. And maybe right around the time of this Tyson documentary, you might have been seeing the first wave of changes in genre of documentary as a viable sort of film genre. It's still fairly early, I know, but it might have been right around the time when what was starting to... Maybe it was a couple of years later, though, when Hoop Dreams would come out, when... Roger Me was coming out. I mean, all of a sudden there were some documentaries that actually had commercial success.
Right. Exactly.
And we're putting them on the map.
Exactly.
And so all of a sudden, what was your reaction to the beginning of this period of time? Because here you were already making films for close to 20 years. And
Well, Harlan County showed in theaters. And American Dream showed in theaters. And I was so astounded that they were showing in theaters that when guys would take me out for dates, they'd ask me where I wanted to go. And I said, Cinema 2.
So
and I'd wait until the film was out.
Yeah, right.
Showing. And I'd walk up to some of the people and say, oh, well, do you think that's a good film, or should I go see it?
Your market testing, basically.
No, I was like, please like it.
Yeah, I know.
And I wasn't market testing.
Well, I meant, No, I know. You weren't judging. You weren't going to make decisions based on those reactions so much as just kind of like figuring out whether or not people were responding to it.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and also so awed by the fact that it was showing there and people were actually there. And one time, a bunch of people came out and said, oh, it was a terrible film. And then I realized that they had seen another film, and that it wasn't Harlan County. But that's the extent. I mean, it was very good that, not too many people asked me for dates during that period.
But you took dates to the films?
I did. No, I made them sit outside with me until the film came out.
All right. Well, you can have very deep conversations during that period of time while you're waiting.
Right.
So it's uninterrupted time together on a bench. That's funny. Was there a point though? Had you gotten like bad reviews? Had you gotten? Was there a low point?
Yeah,
in
there
here
was.
Where you ever thought about throwing everything away, or maybe you were going the wrong direction, or
no.
I don't know.
No, I mean I got a very bad review for Harlan County.
Really?
Yeah.
What, like the mainstream press? Or?
I think it was John Simon and Frank Rich. Both hated the film.
Well, wasn't Frank Rich reviewing theater at the time, though?
No, this was before theater. I wish he had been doing theater at the time. Yeah, he said that it was a terrible film and it had as much interest as a half-baked tourist would have.
Did he ever?
I went up to him at a lunch, and I said, "That's really what you thought of Harlan County?" I said, "Maybe you were having a bad day, and somebody disappointed you. Would you just?"
This is after the Oscar?
No, this was before.
Okay.
This was after the New York Film Festival. That was the review he wrote, and I said, "Well, would you look at it again?" And he went, "No, I wouldn't look at it again." But I tried.
I mean, he's, kind of turned into a more reasonable. I mean, also people had a lot of problems with him as the theater, too much of a power monger as a theater reviewer too. But since then, it seems like he's kind of been able to get out of his own way to some degree. I don't know.
Right, but that was a really bad review.
Oh, well,
and nobody would tell me about it. Because I said, well, the Times, was that good? Or the Daily News? I guess he was writing for the Post then. I don't remember one of them. And they told me about everyone but that one. And finally I had to go out and get it because nobody would tell me.
Yeah.
And I read it.
Well, fortunately it didn't discourage you from moving forward because
it made me mad.
And I just kind of put a little piss and vinegar in your...
Right.
And when did you begin Cabin Creek? When did...
During Harlan County.
Oh, so it really... Oh, so
it came from Harlan County because there's a place called Cabin Creek, and I never wanted to forget it. And so I decided I wanted to name my company Cabin Creek Films.
That's terrific.
And it was, what they call a holler. And there were young girls that were prostitutes at the age of 11 and 12, and it was such poverty, the way that people lived.
So what you're saying, the Cabin Creek was a holler?
Yeah.
That's what they called it, a holler?
Yeah. Instead of a holler.
I see. Okay. Oh, I didn't know the origin story of the Cabin Creek. So
yeah.
Okay. And so it's nice because, forever have this association with your first success and first story and first...
Well, there was a film that we did as a collective before that, and that was called Winter Soldier. It was Vietnam veterans giving testimony of what they did in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. And I did that with a collective of people, and we lived with Vietnam veterans in Alamuchee, New Jersey for a long time during the editing. And so that was a pretty extraordinary experience, and that was before Harlan County.
Oh, okay. And who was anybody in that collective that's still, I'm assuming everybody is probably somewhat productive?
Well, let's see. Nancy Baker, who's a great editor, and Bob Fury, a great director and also a great DP, and Fred Aronson, who lives in California, and he's producing, and a lot of people.
Okay.
Still.
Sorry, I missed that one, too. Well, I'm going to have to figure out how to catch up.
I'll give you copies of everything.
Oh, I appreciate it.
In your spare time, you can watch them all.
I wish it weren't my spare. I wish that were my spare time. Unfortunately, it takes up too much of my
lifetime.
Yeah, right, exactly. I have a few other things. So I guess the next one worth mentioning is the Woody Allen is Wild Man Blues, and it was a particular interesting story too, or timing of it. Not going to even remotely delve with the more recent post Golden Globe,
right?
Because I don't really do that. I don't really go. I don't get involved at all in that conversation. It's a rabbit hole, first of all. Second, it's not my business. But the film was, in the sense that Mike Tyson was around the time of a controversial period.
Right, the Desiree Washington
scandal, I guess we could say. But for
Mike Tyson was in jail for the rape of Desiree Washington.
So there you go. Okay, that's as blunt as one can be. And then also right around this time, this is Wild Man Blues was not long after he and Soon-Yi formed a romantic relationship.
Exactly.
So that we can say that.
Yes.
So this was coming out of a darker period for Alan.
Well, you could say it was a dark period, but it was also a light period for him, too. Because, when I was first asked to do the film... this guy from Chicago called up, and he just said, would you like to do a film on Woody Allen and his jazz tour? And I think he'll be taking Soon-Yi with him. And I said, of course I would love to do that. And my friend said, oh, Barbara, you can't do that. And I said, of course I can do that. And
that's just fuel for the fire.
Oh, yeah.
As far as you're concerned, when you're hearing you can't, apparently it seems...
Well, they just meant, why would you want to do that? That would hurt Mia Farrow, and why would you want to, add to that?
What did you think about that?
I thought, I really want to find out who she is and what's happening, and I want to make it not just a film about his jazz tour, but really see what their relationship is. And I was very lucky because when I went to meet Woody for the first time, we talked about everything other than the film. We talked about David Blaine, the magician. We talked about...
What did he have to say about David Blaine?
We both knew him. We both liked him.
Okay.
And so we were
Must have been very young at the time. He was just starting. Okay.
Yeah, and so we were just enjoying...
Understood. It was a way of connecting off something lighter.
Yes. Yeah. When we knew we had something else to talk about, so putting it off as long as possible.
Yeah.
But then I also realized, okay, well, Woody only gives you maybe 20 or 30 minutes, so I better get to it and talk about this film. And so I said, so are you looking forward to going to all these places? And suddenly he just changed and he said, no, I didn't know there were so many places and I really don't want to go. I can go to one or two of them, but not all of these places. And most of these places I'm afraid to go to, just don't want to do it. So I just was inside wishing, I wish I had a camera right this minute. This is such a great way to start. And I said, so Woody, I can film whatever I want, right? There's no holes barred.
Had he seen your films? Do you know at that point?
I don't know.
You don't even know. All right.
I don't even know.
I wouldn't assume that.
I mean, obviously he wanted me to do it.
You were already vetted, obviously. So
yeah, so I was meeting with him and I was doing it. But we were having our first conversation about it.
Yes.
And so he said, yes, you can do whatever you want.
He did say to me years ago that if he had to choose a career, he would choose music.
And now I give out my laundry. No starch, and do we want it back with holes in it, or do you want it the way we send it in? The tour started off just me and the banjo player saying what a nice idea it would be to play a couple of places in Europe just for fun.
Woody, be careful, play well, huh?
And then for me. They may be here for Berlusconi or Mick Jagger or somebody. For me, it's a total digression from reality.
Are you ready?
I'm lost. This whole trip between the fans and the responses and the places, it's the same photo, no? Beautiful. Thank you so much. You have to be careful. The mayor has many enemies. This is where we sleep. The ceilings are just a little higher. It'd be perfect. Where's my coat?
I love him. You have humor. You are so intelligent.
Oh, don't stop. Don't stop. They won't pay 10 cents to see one of my movies, but passing in a gondola, they love it.
Don't think for a moment that you are what you are by yourself. You have
He stuck to his word. I mean, I got to go into his hotel room early in the morning, watch them eating breakfast, watch him going swimming, watch him staying in all these wild hotel rooms, watching him going to Turin and other places that creeped him out, being very depressed and having Suni comfort him when she could, and really watch this relationship bloom, as well as his music, and also making fun of himself. He'd look around backstage and he couldn't find a reed for his clarinet, and he'd want to put on his old man sweater, and it was just brilliant. And she was so great. She was just very gracious, and she would say, Woody, I don't understand. Everybody's standing around you and you'll only talk to the person who's in charge. Why don't you talk to everybody as a group? Or if we came in, she'd say, have you eaten? Are you thirsty? Do you want anything?
Had anybody ever been telling him this since he was a kid, maybe, trying to socialize him on some level? Nobody was telling him these things. I don't know what I don't know what his relationships are with his past relationships. I don't know, or his romantic partnerships, and I don't know what his relationship was with his sister. I just know that it sounds like Soon-Yi was trying to, like, here, this is how you behave.
Yeah,
as gently as she
and
could.
getting him to go places
Right.
and to do things. And Woody, for me, was just like one of the characters in his film. It was like he jumped off the screen and there he was. So
Yeah. And did anything, like, end up... Well, it's funny because it wouldn't be too many years later where I guess most of his financing started coming from Europe, and he started making films in Europe.
Yeah.
Shortly after this period, right?
Right. Well, he loved London because there was no sunshine.
Oh, and they speak English.
He doesn't. Yeah, and they speak English. But he likes New York better because
Oh,
you
sure.
can order things at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning if you're hungry, like Chinese food or something.
He's a neurotic Jewish person. Like,
No, but he is, but he's very wonderful and very deep and very smart and very talented human being.
yeah, to say the least.
And I had a lot of fun on that trip.
Yeah.
And I had a wireless on Woody, and I could hear, and so we got to eat where they ate, which were the best restaurants. So I'd report to the rest of the crew, okay, the bass is good. We should all get the bass.
Oh, you were...
know?
Yes.
Yeah.
He was bugged.
Yeah.
So you got to...
I got to hear everything.
That's funny.
You know,
Yeah.
what was good at this restaurant.
Yeah,
Or,
that's funny.
Yeah.
Were those recorded for posterity? Were those... or it was just you were overhearing?
I think just the
Yeah.
Nagra was on, not on record.
That's too bad.
Yeah, that would have been
Let's
fun.
do a lot of those suggestions may still hold up in this.
Yes.
And then by this time now you're well along. You had to kind of work, I guess, in with celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's right. Even the Dixie Chicks. That story came out of another scandal in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost the kind of reverse scandal, where this time it's are justified in
right.
at least to us, but in terms of being anti-W. But Natalie Maines had made the comment about that she was ashamed of being from the same state of right. Not
to
long,
say it
long
exactly.
Before.
Just so you know, we're ashamed that the President of the United States is from Texas. And that was the entire comment that got her blacklisted.
Right. Oh, yeah. And I don't think people may recall just how threatened they were at the time of that, past kind of racist but their lives were threatened regularly and their families, I'm assuming. And
Yeah, exactly. They were threatened. They were told if they went to Dallas, they'd be killed. There were letters that were written that Natalie Maines was going to die.
on stage.
Yes,
right. When she
on
would have
stage,
to walk on stage.
and you'd watch, and the other two would sort of move a little further away from her. But what that film was about friendship. It was about standing up for what you believed in. It was about how they backed each other up. It's as if every woman who saw that film wanted girlfriends, just like, Natalie, Emily, and Marty.
Mm.
Every step of the way, we walk the line. Your days are numbered, so
Freedom of speech is fine, but my God, you don't do it outside of the country and you don't do it in mass publicly.
Being ashamed of our president means being ashamed of our country. Move to France, Dixie Chicks.
Strong. Right. Say it.
jungle, 4 games to play. I'm traveling all hard away, trying to get away. I was raised in the country.
Did Simon tell y'all the American Red Cross wouldn't take $1 million from us?
Well, you do know that George W. Bush is the honorary chairman.
This whole week they didn't play us.
Well,
this whole week they didn't play us.
No one boycotted you.
Yes, that one
is a boycott.
It's not a boycott.
How is it not a boycott? They haven't been playing our music for a few weeks.
Boycott is when someone says, we are not playing.
Simon, actions speak louder than words. What's the difference? You tell me the difference.
All I know is all these radio stations, they pretend to support them, but they won't play them. We call and ask, and they won't.
No other artist that we play on the radio would get the kind of hate mail and complaint calls and I'm never listening to you again, I'm never doing business with you again. No one gets that. I could probably put Marilyn Manson on the radio station and not get that kind of negative feedback, even though we're a country station.
It deepened them. It allowed them to write songs. They won, 9 Grammys after that. And their
the Home album
films
was
were,
their biggest
their
success.
songs were
Right.
activist songs
Right.
and
Folk
very
songs.
political and coming from their gut. So
Yeah. That brings up actually something that is curious. Everybody knows documentaries. You have an idea of when you're going into it, like what kind of story you want to tell, and then you don't know really what's going to happen, of course. So that's the beauty of it. And I'm wondering if when you're making a film like Shut Up and Sing, right? Not just Shut, just...
it's the Dixie Chicks, Shut Up and Sing.
The Dixie Chicks, Shut Up and Sing. It's good to have them in the title. Could sell some copies.
Well, you're good on marketing, right?
I figure I'm learning a lot. I mean, I see nothing's by accident.
Uh-huh.
There are different times when, like, the story, and you're discovering the story, what that film was about. Does it sometimes even happen after you've finished it and seen it, and you realize, oh, I made a movie about that?
Well, the beauty of documentary is that you can research and you can think and you can decide all you want, but once you get there, you just have to go with what happens because you don't know what decisions people are going to make. You don't know what direction they're going to go in. And who knew? I mean, the Dixie Chicks maybe wouldn't have been such a tight-knit group. Maybe they were afraid. There were times when, you didn't know what was going to happen, that maybe they wouldn't have a career after this, and did that really matter to them? Or, it was it's so many different influences and levels and complexities when you're out there. It's just, and you're privy to them. You just get to follow them around and see them in their most intimate moments.
And vulnerable.
And they no longer really become celebrities. They're people. They're people who have choices to make. They're people who, are just like everybody else, who have to figure out what's right and what's wrong for them to do. And the celebrity thing leaves
pretty quick
when you get into very intimate situations with them.
Right. And it's I see there is a kind of a theme that's emerged throughout these films, going back to your earlier films too, that each one is in such there's a volatile level to almost every story. Of obviously the ones that are a little bit more obvious when you talk about Harlan County, and there's a strike going on, and an American Dream, where people are in extreme situations and very, very stressed out, to say the least. And you're in the middle of that. And then also when you're talking about like a Mike Tyson going through the scandal and picking up the pieces, and a Woody Allen going through his, and the Dixie Chicks going with there's always this possibility of the story just going completely off the rails. In every one of those, I could see.
Oh, absolutely. But the great things that happen, for example, when we were editing Wild Man Blues, Woody would call me in the editing room all the time and say, okay, so when can I come in and see it? And I'd say, Woody, it's 5 hours long. And so then he'd call, and I'd say, Woody, it's 3 hours long. And so he said, I can take 3 hours. And so I said, all right, come on in. Uh-huh. So he and Suni came in and watched it, and it was as if they were seeing their relationship happen. Mm-hmm. Woody was sitting there, and he had his finger in his mouth, and she had her arm through his, and the two of them were in the front of their chairs, and it was wonderful. Larry Silk was the editor, and I just watched them watching the film.
Yeah.
So, you think people are teetering, or you think they're at the end of, their hooks or whatever, and what happens is that you see the brightness and the beauty. When the Dixie Chicks, they came in here to look at the film for the first time in Fine Cut, and each one of them was so nervous through the whole thing, and each one was in a different position. One of them had her knees locked around her, and the other one was sitting with her arms very close, and they just watched it. Yeah. And Marty, near the end of the film, said, I would give up my career for Natalie if it meant she would be at peace. And Natalie started crying in the screening room, and she said, I didn't know you said that. I didn't know you would do that. And they just, embraced each other. So you just see so many beautiful things coming out, and it's such surprises for the characters in the film. So even though they've had a hard time, they've had so much richness between themselves.
I got moved just now when you said this, but I can imagine they may almost think it's worth it. If their families' lives were in potential jeopardy, I'm sure they would have.
Well, but it made them strong, and it made them tough. And
Sure.
sometimes when you're under attack, it sharpens you.
Oh, absolutely.
And it allows you to soar.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty common question I ask a lot of in particular, the documentary filmmakers, because so often they're making a film about a subject or subjects, and they'll invite them to see the film. And I wonder, because the critical response is so nice and the audience responses are very nice, but, as I always say, the subject's response and their endorsement is so important. Has it gone in a way you didn't expect, or I mean, I assume because of the level of respect and because these are long-winded questions. I apologize. It's my way, and I try to edit my question after the fact because I need to get to the point sometimes. But you know where I'm going.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah. American Dream was a toughie.
Yeah.
And nobody saw it who was in it until it premiered at the New York Film Festival. And I had all of the different characters there. There was Ray Rogers and Jim Guyette, who were part of this group called P9, who were fighting against their international union, who didn't want them to go on strike.
They were part of the local union, in other words.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then there was Louis Anderson, who was part of the international union. And the whole film is about, the three-tier, the international union, the company, and the local union all fighting during a time of real recession and a cutting of wages. And so all of them were up there with me. And I had Louis Anderson on one side of me and Ray Rogers and Jim Guyette on the other side, and they just started fighting and screaming with each other. And
this is during the Q&A after the premiere.
After the film.
Okay.
Yeah. Their disdain for each other and their dislike for each other. It just kept coming out. It was nothing had changed, and each one held tight to their position.
Didn't budge. Yeah.
Until finally someone in the audience stood up and said, "What is wrong with you guys? This film is a brilliant film. It shows what, a company can do to really hurt workers, and you guys should all be working together and not working apart." And then the whole audience stood up and clapped, and that sort of silenced the bickering and the fighting.
One should hope it would.
But, yeah.
So, okay, that was a good example.
Hard,
That's a good example.
I was very nervous that night.
Yeah.
Because I knew.
Right. What was it, 81, 82, right around there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also, and none of the sides had known what I had filmed. I mean, I filmed guys who were deciding to cross a picket line, who had been union all their lives just because they couldn't feed their families anymore, and they broke down in tears. And I filmed meetings with the International Union trying to plot how to destroy what Jim Guyette and Ray Rogers were doing. And I filmed meetings of Ray and Jim trying to plot to destroy whatever the International Union was doing. So I had all of that material. And that was tough. So I had to keep it all silent.
Yeah. And then also, just to squeeze it in too, I definitely want to know, did Mariel Hemingway, she obviously was supporting the film, so I assume she was not displeased with the turnout of that film.
Well,
because we're dealing with suicide and depression, and mental illness, excuse me, and although the two are certainly tied together in many ways, but mental illness and also seemingly genetic mental illness, where we're talking about it going through generations of a family.
Well, when Mariel and I met, we talked about all of this, and she said that she didn't want to leave a stone unturned. And she didn't. Mm-hmm. And she let me film everything I wanted to film. including a section that was very difficult for me, which was a section about her father having some sexual contact with her two sisters, and Mariel seeing that, and that had never been discussed before or anyone said anything. And I would be pacing during the editing, trying to find out every single little thing that she said to me about this so that I could put it in and make sense of it. And I just thought for myself that if people are really going to understand what alcoholism does and mental illness does, that this is something that's very prevalent and it needs to be mentioned. And that was one of the things I was worried about that she wouldn't like when I showed her the film.
When I was young, I would often hike these hills. I knew if I didn't get outside that I'd just want to cry.
My father was the oldest son of Ernest Hemingway.
Cheers!
It was kind of like the Kennedy family. The Kennedys had these horrible tragedies, and we were sort of the other American family that had this horrible curse.
My grandfather, Ernest, is one of the greatest writers of the 20th century, and yet he suffered tremendous mental illness. I had come from 7 suicides, perhaps more.
And we had also found 43 hours of film about her sister Margot that she didn't even know existed. And I didn't tell her that I found it. And she would, because I was afraid that if she knew I had it, then she wouldn't be as free with her memories, because she didn't know whether...
All of a sudden now there was a second perspective. Right, yeah.
That her memories were correct. I mean, even her memories of, her mother sitting in the kitchen with her legs up on the sink and seeing the kitchen as yellow and, robin's egg blue, and the fighting between her parents and wine time. And she just never knew that all of this was real. And so showing the film to her for the first time, it was just about finished. And I went to L.A., and she came in, and she and a friend of hers and I sat on the couch, and also our executive producer from OWN, Erica Forstadt. The 4 of us sat in the room together, and at the very beginning of the film, she just started to cry because she thought the film was going to be all about her. And then suddenly she saw her parents, and suddenly she saw her sister, and she saw all this material she had never seen before. She'd never seen her parents on film before. And she was totally enthralled in it because her kids had never seen their grandparents except in some old faded photos. It's very dysfunctional family. And for her, she suddenly, for the first time, really understood the pain that her sister was going through.
So it turned out all right.
Yeah, it turned out to be something so much more than she ever thought that it would be. And it, for me as a filmmaker, it had
because I guess you were following her
complexities.
Because you were following her right through her current current life, and so that was what she was more privy to, not what you heard the backstory and the history.
1984,
yeah, right, and just the emphasis on the legacy of the family, and
exactly.
It was very compelling.
And I mean, we had Margot interviewing her dad on what it meant to be the son of Ernest Hemingway.
Yeah.
I mean, just things that everybody wants to know.
Of course.
And Margot talking about not being loved and not knowing what she was going to do. And when she went to the Betty Ford Clinic, nobody ever coming to see her from the family to visit her, and that she was so lonely when she got out that she had to hire a hooker to come just to hold her to get the pain out. I mean, so it got very deep.
Yeah. One can definitely, there's a lot of questions I could think of to ask about that level of sensitivity, and you're in the trust, and I guess at that point you just, do your best to respect that trust. And it's pretty plain. Hopefully, you know better and the choices and when to shoot and when to, what to include in the public.
Well, that wasn't
film
shooting. That had been shot.
Yeah, right. In terms of what to include in the edit and all these different issues, and it's heavy duty. Last thing, I guess, I just want to make sure we squeeze in because I want to let you get back to your work. And thanks again, by the way. It means a lot to me that you gave me all of this time. It really does. You're now embarking on what seems to would be a lot of fun, another music-oriented project. I don't know the story of Sharon Jones. I don't know her backstory. I know I picked up the most recent album in anticipation of our conversation. So
Sharon Jones.
Yeah.
Sharon Jones.
I don't know how much you can talk about it, considering that you're just embarking on it.
Yeah, I can. She's so amazing. She's a great soul singer. One of her first jobs in her life was being a guard at Rikers Island. And
what?
She used to sing in her church. And when she went to Sony, they said, "You'll never make it. You're too short, you're too fat, and you're too black, and you won't make it."
And that might have been, by the way, from a black person saying that, by the way. I just wanted you to know that's that business, we should just say, is so, historically so based on the division of race. It's the history is shameful, But I just thought I'd mention that.
But
anyway,
Sharon really had something that she wanted to do, and singing is her heart and her spirit, and she got connected with a group called the Dap-kings.
Do I have to wait for you, honey, before a girl like me can move on? Ooh, baby, tell me how long do I have to wait for you, honey, before I can say that you're gone? Every hour seems like a day, and every day is like a year, and every week.
She's on tour right now. She had pancreatic cancer.
And survived it?
Just,
well, obviously.
Just recently.
Oh, my God.
And we filmed her in the chemo units, and there she was, like sunshine there, telling stories and singing and talking to people. And I filmed her last chemo on New Year's Eve day. And she has a new album out, Give the People What They Want. She just had a big show at the Beacon, and she didn't know whether she could do it or not. She hadn't been able to really exercise her lungs and do what she needed to do. And about a half an hour before she went on, she said, "Barbara, I just don't know who I am anymore. I just don't know if I can go out there." And she said, "And if I can't dance," she said, "dancing is what I'm all about, dancing and singing. I'm just not going to stand there and not move." And she said, "So who am I? Who is this Sharon Jones?" And they called her out, and she killed it. She was wonderful. She danced, she sang, she just was brilliant. It was as if all the adrenaline she had saved up, and this is right after her last chemo. She went out there, and now she's on tour.
That's remarkable, because that is cancer is pretty serious, but pancreatic cancer,
very serious.
Yeah, that's usually a death sentence for most people.
She taught me what it was to be positive, to take what you have and let it grow, and to always have a good word and not sink into the depths of depression. Not that she wouldn't cry and she wouldn't be upset and she wouldn't question herself, but there was more of an inner strength of, it's not my time to go. I've got a lot more singing and a lot more people. I've got a long bucket list out there.
Yeah. Is she, roughly what age is she at this
57.
point? Oh, yeah. Well, there you go. Lots of years ahead for a singer. Are you shooting the tour, or are you?
I'm leaving Thursday. Okay. Going on the bus with her in Milwaukee for a while, and we're going to film another concert in Lawrence, Kansas, and we'll see what happens.
Where is she from?
She grew up in the Bronx.
Okay,
but
yeah.
she
worked at Rikers, so it's an island drive off that.
But she also grew up in Augusta, but left
Maine?
when she was 3.
Okay. Oh, so her early childhood.
But left when she was 3 to come to the Bronx.
Okay.
So.
In Maine? Is that Augusta?
No.
Helen?
In South Carolina.
Oh, okay. Because there's an Augusta.
Right. Not in Maine. In the South.
Oh, very good. So Sharon Jones will look forward to, and then I'm going to guess. Let's see. We're talking about you're going towards April, March, April. So hopefully, maybe by what are you thinking? The holidays? You'll have a movie?
We'll see. We start editing mid-April.
Oh, as soon as that?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So you have shot most of it, in other words, because through the illness and all, and the, what shall we say, the recovery.
Yes.
Which is more important. And maybe we'll get a much briefer chat in before around the time of the film.
No, absolutely.
And maybe you'll be back at the New York Film Festival. Well, you can do better than that. Lazy bunch of programmers. I'm kidding. In fact, my next thing is new directors talking to the couple of the programs at MoMA and Film Society together. Priest-brokering. I'm like,
No, that's great.
It's fun to have them on, and talk about new directors, new films. Anyway, thank you very much for...
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And, I think this is going to be a fantastic show. We got over an hour, so I don't know if you meant to give me that much time, but...
Well, of course, and I want you to use clips of the film.
Oh, yeah. I absolutely will.
Okay.
I will. So thank you, Barbara Kopple, and you've now survived. You survived Mike Tyson, Woody Allen, the Dixie Chicks, miners, meat processors, packers, excuse me. And now Filmwax Radio. Gregory Peck. Oh, well, that's true. We're going to look. We'll include all this in my show, in the notes and everything. I put a post and everything like that. We'll have We'll hopefully there's a few people out there may not be as familiar with your work as most of my audience is, and that they'll go and see all these films or revisit them because they were definitely worthy of revisiting. So again, I look forward to future conversations. Thank you.
Oh, likewise. Thank you.